Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world that you're dialing in from. Firstly, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the webinar. The topic today is strategies to gain control and efficiencies on indirect spend. My name is Tracy O'Halloran. I'm a business consultant here at SoftCo, and I'm joined by my colleague Garret Pearse, who is the head of pre-sales at SoftCo.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon to you all.
So Garret has over 20 years experience in AP and P2P best practice processes. He's been involved in implementing those processes in many organizations over the years, including Primark, Renault, Grafton Group, and many, many more. So look, we want you to get as much out of this webinar today as possible. So if you do want to get involved and ask a question, there's a panel on the right-hand side for questions and comments. Please feel free to write to us. We'll monitor that during the webinar, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So to kick off, I'll just give you a quick introduction before handing you over to Garret. He's then going to talk to you about the common challenges organizations face when dealing with either non-production or non-trade spend, depending on what you call it. He'll then focus on ways to gain control over this, and we can finish up with a Q&A at the end, but as mentioned, please feel free to ask questions throughout, and we will try and answer them. So just to give you some background, the SoftCo platform consists of a number of modules, but our main focus is really around the procurement and accounts payable, automation, and providing analytics around these areas. So we are a Microsoft Go partner, and we also partner with Amazon Web Services for our cloud offering. So this is just some of our clients that we work with. You can see here that these are organizations of all scales and across multiple industries. But I guess the common theme amongst them all is that they've all experienced the same or similar issues as the ones that we're going to talk to you here about today. Our main goal is to improve the finance and AP processes of the organizations you've just seen. And we spend a lot of time with our customers to try and get their feedback, which is the stats that you see on the screen now in front of you. So I suppose we're trying to help organizations reduce costs and lower their approval times. And we're really doing this by giving them 100% visibility and control over all invoices at every moment of the process. So look, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Garret now. He'll talk to you about the common challenges that organizations have faced.
Great. Thanks very much, Tracy. So yes, as Tracy was saying, we work with organizations throughout many different industries, but they all very frequently, from a finance point of view, have very similar challenges, very similar areas that they're looking for us to help them address. And here are just some of the ones that we often encounter when we go on site and start talking to our customers about what particular issues they're having. And hopefully some of those issues are familiar to yourselves. What we're going to focus on today are the first two. As I said, by virtue of helping with the first two, we will often help address some of those other areas that you see. But if we start just on the challenge of uncontrolled indirect spend, and what we mean by indirect spend is any spend on goods or services that aren't necessarily being used to manufacture a good or for resale by your business. So these are typically things like service procurement, like training, or consumables for things like even as simple and mundane as your photocopier, etc. All of those types of spend, they're all often unmanaged or not subject to standard sign-off processes in businesses. They're often on the whim of your business users out in the business. There may be some kind of informal approval based on getting their managers okay, either verbally or manually. But the key thing is there's no central control, there's no compliance with organizational rules with regard to value sign-off and making sure that they're ordering things from your preferred suppliers, that the people they're dealing with are who you want your business users to be buying things from, and they're the things you want your business users to be buying. So we're going to look at that. And then as a kind of carry-on or related issue is the lack of visibility with regards to those spends or liabilities that are being incurred by those business users, but also where that leaves the AP department, particularly with regards to invoices that may arrive out of the blue into the AP department, that may sit on desks of users out in the business before they're eventually forwarded on somewhat guiltily onto the AP department for payment. And the first you know about it is an email you get just as you're about to close your month-end accounts and realize there's a $10,000 invoice or €10,000 invoice sitting on your desk that you need to process, accrue for, get approved, whatever the case may be. That's all stuff that you're working blind that's out in your business. So what we're looking to do is put in place processes that help you remove that blind spot, give you full visibility of all spend incurred by the business, all costs incurred by the business with regard to that type of spend, and also full visibility of the invoices when they do come in, where they are, what needs to be done with them, what can be automated with them, etc. So from that point of view, we're going to look at a couple of typical things we would look to implement with our customers to address these issues. So first place to start is at the start of the process, where often AP are left cleaning up the mess made by business users, and they're left cleaning up the mess presented by an invoice arriving in out of the blue. So what we would always recommend is, where possible, put a requisition process, a controlled requisition process on front of the spend. Make sure that your businesses can only buy things having gone through the appropriate approval channels. So that means getting them to ask for permission rather than forgiveness for what they're about to buy. Make sure that they're only able to buy what they should be able to buy with regards to their particular function within the business, and making sure they're only spending money with your preferred suppliers, those suppliers that you've previously onboarded or vetted, to make sure they're the ones that can give you the best price and service for what they're giving you. And also at the same time, have your business users provide you with upfront with some of the accounting information that you're going to need down the line. What the amount is, what particular cost center or cost centers it's ultimately going to be charged to, what GL codes, any related costs such as project codes or things that you want to associate the cost with. So with the requisition process, I'm going to give you a brief demo in a moment of how that might look. You can do a lot of that. And again, it front loads all of the information and all of the due diligence that at the moment, if you don't have such a process, that you're having to do when the invoice comes in. And at that point, it's too late. You've already incurred the liability. The goods are probably already sitting in your business user's office, or they've already gone on that training course and you're just having to pay for it. So by swapping it around with the requisition system, you're avoiding all of that. So what does that process look like from a requisition point of view? There's a fairly simple diagram here just showing you the process flow. So it starts with your business user. So you're putting the onus on the business user to create a requisition. Using the requisition system, they can select specific goods from an internal product catalog, maybe your preferred laptop that you want them to be able to buy, or the specific toner cartridge that all of your printers use, etc. You can give them general category-based items such as general training, and they can fill in additional details later, or additional consulting, or whatever the case may be. And I'll show you an example of that. Or additionally, they can do what's called punch out, which is where you have particular suppliers whose website allows you to, from the SoftCo system in this example, jump out to Amazon, for example, or Staples, browse that site, select the goods you want to buy, and bring them back into an internal requisition process to get that expense or that procurement piece signed off before you issue the PO. So allow your users to choose and say what they want to buy, apply the particular coding with regards to cost centers, etc. Have that go through the appropriate approval process. So that can be based on what's been bought, the value of what's been bought, what department it's been bought on behalf of, etc. Those can all feed into what particular sign-off it's going to need by the business. Does it need one person? Does it need three? Does it need to go to regional director level? Does it need to go to head office? That type of thing. That can all be implemented within the rules configuration of the requisition system. Once approved, then, at that point and only then, is the instruction via a purchase order issued to the supplier. So at that point there, you know that the only things your supplier is going to provide are ones that have been purchase ordered. And again, we found through implementing systems like this, that suppliers end up becoming your main policer of that. They won't accept a verbal order from your business users unless they provide a purchase order with it as well, because they know on the flip side of that, they're not going to get paid if they don't have a purchase order to support the invoice that they send in at a later date. You can additionally require receipting, particularly for physical goods, so you want to record the fact that they've come in the door to you. And at that point there, you can know that you've got it. You can track any returns. You can accrue for the fact that you've received the goods if you want to base your accruals off of goods received that have not been invoiced, that type of thing. So again, that, to my mind, it completely transforms the landscape from a finance point of view with regards to control and visibility of what your business users are buying. So I'm just going to do a very quick demonstration of what that might look like to your business users. I've just switched over to the login screen to the SoftCo system. It's all browser-based. I'm logging in as a user called Paul, who needs to procure some consulting services. When he logs in, his view of the world is brought into the procurement module. He can see any draft requisitions that he's already working on. He can see anything that's been rejected back to him. And he can also see anything that's been assigned to him. Maybe he has to sign off on some requisitions, and also he can receive some goods when they come in the door as well. His default view on the right-hand side is things that he's purchased previously. So we try and make it as easy. If you're buying the same things over and over again, that's your first default view. He additionally can search for the full catalog for particular items that he wishes to buy, and he can browse by category as well. And additionally, we can limit the particular products that are available to him to buy. So maybe if he works in IT, he can only buy IT-related equipment and services. If he works in operations, he can only buy maintenance and consumable items for your production or whatever the case may be. But in this case here, he's previously purchased consulting, so he can just use that item again. So he can say he's got to buy consulting services at 10 by 1,000 a day. You can simply just add that to the requisition. And what that does is it creates a little shopping cart. So again, similar to the Amazon type experience that most of us are familiar with. He can add other items to the requisition if he chooses, but if he's happy with that, he can just click proceed. And at that point there, he's just prompted to provide some further information in that requisition. So it's a general category of consulting, so it's going to look for a bit more information than if he selected an example, for example, the laptop, where we already know who the supplier is. We can put in a description. Where he maybe needs it delivered, so we're going to use our Boston office of this company. The company he works for is a fictitious company called Carter. The invoice address, again, we can have that default. And then you just need to select the particular supplier. And the key thing here is he's only able to select suppliers that have been set up in your finance or your ERP system. We would take a direct integrated feed of that information. So if it wasn't an existing supplier, he would have to have them go through the appropriate onboarding system before that was available to him. Or you can direct him to, we already have a supplier that provides that service, please use them. So we've selected Deloitte. It has some information such as the default email address, payment terms, etc. You can just fill in some more information. As to what the order is for. He can identify which cost center he needs to charge that to. And again, his access to cost centers and projects can be limited with regards to what you want him to have available to him. So in this case here, we've associated with the sales cost center and a particular project. So once he's provided all that information, and again, we can require additional things like quotations be attached, or he can add internal comments. But once he's provided the minimum amount of information, he can then send that for approval. Approval can either be automatically determined, or he can select subject to, if he has his own, subject to his own discretion as to who it needs to go to. In this case here, it's going to be assigned to Aaron for approval. And once he's clicked OK, that's his piece of the process done. That's been sent for approval, and he can track that using the monitoring functionality here to see where it's at with regards to the approval process. And at that point there, he's given the business visibility of the fact that he's looking to incur that cost. So from a approver point of view, what does the approver see? Well, if I jump to my email inbox, you'll see that Aaron, I'm sorry, that's just opening up in another window. Let me drag it across. Aaron, the approver, will receive an email, and by design we put as much information into this email as possible, because what we're looking to do is provide Aaron with all of the information he needs to make the business decision as to whether he wants to approve it or not, so he can see the cost, who the supplier is, where it's been coded to, what the overall amounts are, and he can, of course, click on a link and be brought into the system and log in like Paul did and approve via the browser. But more conveniently, he can simply click on a button and approve that requisition directly from his email. So if I just click that approve, I'm going to get a little pop-up. That requisition is now approved. Aaron has done his piece. And if we just wait a moment, you can see there is the purchase order that we have, that's been generated on the back of that requisition being approved. So there you can see purchase order issued immediately to the supplier, also copied to Paul so he's aware that his particular requisition has been signed off, and you can see that's been issued directly to the supplier. So from a user point of view, it's putting controls in terms of how they go about incurring or getting approval for the spend, but it's also fairly convenient. It's easy for them to raise the request, they have visibility of it during the process, and they can see very clearly when it is approved. From a finance point of view, if I just log in as a member of the finance team, be that procurement or AP or any function within the finance team, what that's given them is visibility. If I click over into my order section here and look at POs with open balance, you can very clearly see right up front that you've got an anticipated, let me just sort that in the bottom here, that you've got a new expense or a new purchase order with an open value of 10,000 and nothing's been invoiced against it, but you have clear visibility right up front that your business has incurred this imminent expense of $10,000.
So Garret, sorry to just interrupt you there, but we do have a question that's just come in, and it is, there are some areas of our business that might not have time to wait for approval of requisitions. How would we deal with that?
Yes, it's a fair question. We often, it can be a concern for certain areas of business, whether it be marketing department that want to be able to react very quickly to an opportunity to buy some advertising, or it could be operations that need to get a machine fixed very quickly and they don't have time to necessarily wait for it to go to head office for approval. So what we can do, and it's probably a demonstration for another day, but we can allow you to create pre-planned framework spend, so you can create an overall requisition for an internal requisition for the maintenance requirements of a particular department. That can go through its own internal approval process, and then users can draw down from that as needed. So if you have a user on the shop floor who needs a machine fixed, they can draw down on that pre-approved requisition to immediately create a purchase order against an approved supplier for that type of maintenance. It's giving you the flexibility of putting your business users in control of when they use it at the discretion of the users in a particular way, but you can control what the amount is, what type of goods or services they can spend it on, and you have full traceability of that. So it's a pre-approved requisition, if you like, that they can draw down on as needed without interrupting them from an operational point of view.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so from a requisition point of view, I think we've seen hopefully how you can manage, as I said, get the permission up front rather than have your users ask for forgiveness when an invoice comes in. And that in itself brings a lot of control and visibility and better compliance to your organization. The next area we were going to look at is more specifically with regards to invoice processing, how best to manage your invoices when they do come in. So again, a few key recommendations, a few key things we would look to do. First of all, we would always recommend that invoices should be received centrally. If you have, and we have had a number of clients where the invoices have been sent to users out in the business and they work their way sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly to the AP department and usually arrive right at the end of the month when it's due to be paid, and finance are under pressure to get it paid as quickly as possible, but they're literally receiving it at the last minute. We would always recommend that the best practice way is get it sent centrally. Have a designated email inbox where your suppliers should send their invoices if they're sending it by PDF. Mandate that if they are still going to send paper invoices, that they should come to a central address. And obviously, again, we would always recommend to, and most suppliers are typically happy to send their invoices in via email now. It's better for them and it's better for you. But make AP the first port of call for the invoices. You can always route those invoices out for coding and approval where needed, but the key thing is give AP ownership in terms of visibility and control of those invoices. By virtue of having requisitions and purchase orders, that puts you in a position where you can automatically match those invoices to the appropriate purchase order or purchase orders when you receive them. Make sure that the price is right, that the goods have been received, make sure that it all stacks up to what you ordered. But that can be automated, and I'll give you a couple of examples of where that's been done. So those types of invoices that have been raised are being sent in against purchase orders. You already know a lot more than you would have done in the old world of manual ordering or manual ordering by the business out in the business offices. Where you still receive invoices that aren't PO related, be they utility type bills, you can again look to automate some of that with regards to automatically coding them. They're always encoded. The EFB electricity bill is always encoded to the same GL and cost center. That can be, as soon as the system sees one of those such bills, we can automatically code it. I should have mentioned before that we can also automate the capture of the data from the invoice. So using a tool called OCR, optical character recognition, we can automatically read the key pieces of information, the key piece of data from an invoice without a user having to manually key it. So as an invoice comes into the inbox, we can strip out key pieces of information like the invoice number, the PO number, the amount, who the supplier is, and feed that straight into the matching process. So we're going to look at that in the next few minutes. The other thing is what we would always look to do is make where you're looking for your business users to support you in these coding and approval processes is make their job easy. Give them no reason to not adopt the system. And with that, we use the email approval method. We find that's very intuitive and convenient for your users to adapt. The other thing, which is from a change management point of view, we always feel these systems are best implemented when the edict is issued from on high, whether it be your CFO or somebody at a very senior management level, mandating that this is the way that things should be from now on. It will be a change to how your users have done things previously, and they need to know that this is ultimately the way your organization wants to go, and they therefore need to follow those methods and not try and persist with the old paper-based, semi or unstructured way of doing things. Okay, so from a process point of view, what we can support, if we just break down the invoice process into a number of key steps. So first of all is how do you get those invoices into your organization? And even now, most invoices come in either via email. I'd say that about 80% of our customers' invoices are received as PDF attachment to emails. You still have your paper invoices coming in. The key thing then is get them in centrally, and that allows us to do the data capture. So at that point there, and again, it's probably something that time wouldn't allow us to do today, but we can show you where we can use tools to list the data automatically out of the invoices, look at a PDF from a supplier, identify the key pieces of information, including the PO number, the invoice number, the amounts, etc., and minimize the time doing that data capture so they can get straight into it's called RPA, Robotic Process Automation. We can automate as much of it using our matching and RPA engine here to match purchase order invoices to the purchase order that they refer to, or where there's no purchase order involved, to automatically get those sent for coding and approval, or at very least put AP in the driving seat of being able to easily code them and easily route them off for approval. So what I'm going to show you is from this point on, where we've assumed we've captured the data from the invoice and they've come into the matching engine. The output of that automation process is for those invoices that refer to a PO and where the PO is valid and the price is right and the goods have been received, those invoices will be auto-matched. So from an AP point of view, the invoice will come in, the system will capture the data, it will then go and validate the data against the purchase order and make sure that the goods have been received, and provided everything adds up correctly in the way that you want, they will be marked as auto-matched, and they can flow straight through into your finance system, as opposed to requiring a lot of user time to get those processed. So what you're left with then are the discrepancies, which is maybe invoices for goods that have not been received yet, or where the price is incorrect. And again, I'm going to show you how you can handle those. And then finally, those ones where there is no PO and you just need to get it coded and approved. And I'll very briefly show you how you can handle that. So I'm going to go back into the demo system that I was showing you a moment ago. You can just find it here. And I'm going to stay logged in as a member of the AP administration, and I'm just going to flip over to the AP automation module. And what I can see there, we've got a set of queues where they can see invoices that are assigned to the AP team for processing, and that's what's going to drive their work. But I've got a simple view of the world by default here, which is invoices received today. So these are all the invoices that have come in, have been data captured, and the system has processed those ones that it can. So you'll notice here, a number of them are showing as automatically matched already. So what that means is, if I click in, the invoices come in, we've captured the data, and the system has already gone off and compared the data that it captured from the invoice to the purchase order that it references, and it's already validated and created the coding lines in terms of what GL code, etc., that it needs to be charged to, and that is ready to be sent directly across and posted into your finance system. So this first invoice here is marked as auto-matched. There's no further intervention required here. Likewise with the second one. The third invoice is for something that it is a valid PO, but the goods haven't been received yet. So in many scenarios, that would involve an invoice coming into AP. If you do have an ERP system where you're raising orders from, or you're using the SoftCo system, that you may have to go in and manually check that the goods haven't been received, and you've already done a lot of work to get to the point where you realize that they haven't been received, and then you're having to create an email out to somebody to say, can you go tell me if these have been received or not? In our world, what we would do is the system will automatically identify that fact. The system will automatically identify the responsible user, in this case a user called Rory. And if we just again jump back to the email, Rory will get an email such as this with the invoice attached, with the information about the invoice, and just looking for him to confirm that the goods have been received or not. Sorry, to go in and say that they've been received. So we would need to go in and create a GRN for those goods. What that approach does is it removes a lot of the non-value add activity that AP are having to do. It's putting the pressure on the system to liaise with Rory to the point where he's received it. We can do it in a subtly different way for another type of invoice. So what we find is with service invoices, people aren't good at receiving it or saying that they've got it at the time. They don't come back from a training course and then go into the system and say, I received training. We find a better approach for those types of goods or service, particularly service, is when the invoice comes in, we'll match the invoice to the PO, as we've done in this case. It's a PO invoice, but then we'll go to the person who raised it and get them just to confirm that they're happy they received the service. So there's a subtle difference, but it works better for service-related invoices, service-related POs. And what it gives you, from a user point of view, is a very easy process. If I go back to my inbox here, there's the invoice that Ron has been asked to confirm, the invoice from Microsoft. Is he happy he got the service there? It was for CRM. You can just hit confirm. You go back into the system there, and I just do a refresh on the view. And it may take a moment to update, but there you can see that's now marked as automatically matched as well. So again, it's gone out, we've three-way checked with the user that they've got the goods or service, and AP haven't had to get involved. That again can flow straight through into the finance or ERP system. So what you're left with then are the ones that have some kind of exception. So that can be, if I click into this PO invoice here, that can be something like this example here where we have an invoice that's come in and there's an alert on it. So the system is flagging something and its problem is that the price on one of the lines is incorrect. So the system will manually identify those invoices, and again it can use to take into account things like tolerances, where if it's only 5 cents out you don't care, but if it is 10 cents out or more you want to know. So that's what's happened here. It's saying that the unit price is 61, we really expected it to be 59. Again, because everything's online, the AP user can drill back and look at the purchase order and see what just validate to make sure, yes, that is indeed the price that was on the PO. And then they have within their power, rather than having to go and compose an email off to the user, having figured out who that user is, instead they can use the SoftCo system itself to identify the reason and route it off for query. So they can route it out to a user in a controlled way and get the user to respond with a reason as to whether they need to go request a credit note, do they need to ask revise the PO or request an additional PO, whatever the case may be. So that can all be done from a one-stop shop, if you like, by the AP user. Okay. There's a number of other variations on that theme with regards to goods not being received, or subtle inconsistencies or things wrong with the invoice. But the key thing is, whatever the problem is, the key difference is AP are in control and they have visibility. We know we've received 9 invoices here today because we can see them all here. We know where they are because we can see what status they're at, and if they're out with the business user, we can see who they're out with.
Garret, we do have a question here, and the question is, we receive most of our invoices on paper. What is the best option for us going forward?
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to get your suppliers who send in paper. Easiest thing to do is, if you have a photocopy or type device, is just scan them in and send them to that email address, and the OCR process will pick them up and read the data from them. Obviously, the better long-term solution is try and get as many of your suppliers to send them in by email in the first place, but it's by no means the end of the world if you get in by paper.
Sure, great, thank you.
Couple of final things I'll just show you on the non-PO side. So we've got a couple of non-PO invoices here we're going to look at. So here's an invoice that's come in. It's for Verizon. It's a phone type invoice. And what the system can do, if you configure it as such, if you create the appropriate rules, you can tell it that even though there's not a PO, if it is from a particular supplier, maybe for a particular region, automatically code it to wherever you would typically code it to. So you can see here, this invoice has come in, and it's automatically, using a rule that was set up in the system, automatically split the cost against a number of different cost centers. So that, instead of somebody having to manually break out that coding, the system can do that automatically. So that can be, again, save your AP team with regards to not particular value-add activities that they're doing. The system can do that automatically for you. It can still go out for the appropriate approval, but again, you're trying to minimize that effort required. The other option I'll show you is, I'll just move on to the next invoice that we have in our queue. It doesn't have a rule to automatically code it. You can, of course, add your coding information manually by just selecting in. So I think this is rent and office, so you can start typing in your GL account and whatever cost centers you want to apply it to. And then send that off for approval. The other thing you can do, and we find this particularly useful with the likes of phone bills, where you might receive a single phone bill that relates to 100 different phone accounts. I do know some phone companies will give you a breakdown by user that you can then pivot using Excel into the various cost centers those users belong to. What we can do is allow you to import that information from a spreadsheet. So if I go here, I still have it open actually, that would be a problem. try picking another one here. So you can see there, brought in the information from Excel. There might be just a slight change or make to the Americanization. There we go. So it's brought all that information from the Excel spreadsheet. So there's only 5 rows that we're dealing with here, but we do have customers where they're creating postings for 50, 100 different posting lines. That, you can see, it's created all of the lines automatically for you. So I could spend a lot longer going through all this, but I'm conscious of the time we have allocated. We said we'd typically be done within about 45 minutes. So what we're looking at from the AP point of view is looking to get your invoices in up front, automate whatever you can with them with regards to matching what you can, and where there are discrepancies, get those routed out to the business and resolved as quickly as possible to the point where they're all ready for payment as quickly as possible. The final piece in the puzzle is once you've got those processes in place, is being able to report against those processes in terms of operational reports and also KPI type reports. So what's your current position at any one time with regards to invoices outstanding, accruals, etc. And also from a more analytical point of view is where are we doing well, what's our overall straight through match rate, where are there problems, are there particular suppliers that are causing problems, etc. So let's just use the next couple of minutes before I hand it back to Tracy to wrap up, just to look at some of the reports that putting the system in place will give you. I'm just going to click over to the dashboard here. Actually, I need a different system because it's probably got a bit more up-to-date information. Let me do that. So from a dashboard point of view, what we can see here, from an operations point of view, you can now immediately see what your invoice position is with regard to invoices by due date. If you see a spike for a previous month, you have the ability to click through and see what those invoices are and what the holdup is. From a business user point of view, you have full visibility of what invoices are out with users and to what value. So you can see here, our friend Rory has $206,000 worth of invoices, 6 invoices that are out with him for approval. So you have that. In a manual world, maybe may require you to go through a series of Excel spreadsheets where you've registered that you sent invoices out, or going into email inboxes to see what you've sent out manually to users. Here, you've got that at the click of a button. You can see on a count by count basis where in the process those invoices are. And also, I don't have any here at the moment, but any discount opportunities for early payment, that because you put the processes in place, you may be in a position to take advantage of early payment discounts if that's an option. So these types of reports are very useful for maybe your AP manager come towards the end of the month, your day-to-day reporting, where are we, where is everything. You can take that a step further, and if you just look at some of the KPI reports in terms of seeing how are we doing as a department, as an organization. So what's our average processing time per month? What's our average processing time by supplier? Are there certain suppliers that are killing us? Or are there particular business users that are killing us? So very often, anecdotally, you may know that to have the actual statistics is a huge bonus and allows you to then go and either approach your suppliers, your procurement users, or your business users and say, you're doing things that are leading to us having problems. Maybe the supplier is not quoting the PO on the invoice and you're having to go and add it manually. Maybe your procurement user is constantly getting the price wrong because they haven't checked it. All of those things, if you can identify where those bottlenecks are, you can then start to take steps to improve it. And then you can manage your, have visibility of your straight-through processing. What percentage of invoices are coming through touchless? So to give you an example, this is a demo system, so 90% is probably at the upper end, but we do have customers where they're processing 3,000–4,000 invoices a week and getting 75% straight-through match rate. So where previously with the manual process, they were touching 4,000 invoices a week. By automating both the procurement and the invoice process, they're now down to only having to manually handle the 25% of those that don't automatically match. 75% flow through, and they're just left handling the 25% exception. So again, there's a whole myriad of other reports we can use to drive your process improvement, but I think that hopefully illustrates some of the points that would be of benefit to you. So at this point here, I'm going to hand back to Tracy just to summarize. Thank you very much for your time and attention to that demo. I hope you found it useful.
That's great, Garret. Thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. So look, I suppose just a very quick summary. I'm conscious of the time here, but the main takeaways that we'd like you to get from this today is, I suppose, on the requisition side, it's about gaining control, and you can do that by, I suppose, getting approval before spend, and also ensuring that preferred suppliers are used by business users as well. On the AP side then, I suppose the real focus is on automating the capture, matching and approval part. And this will give visibility as opposed to paper processes where, you know, paper invoices are passed around the organization physically. They may be stored in drawers. In this system, I suppose the key takeaway is that there is nowhere to hide. We're able to see what user has what invoice at any given time, and also the status of all invoices. And then last but not least is on the reporting. I suppose having a tool where you can report in real time will give management that the tools needed, I suppose, and the visibility and control needed to run reports and to make better decisions for the business. So look, we just want to see if there's any final questions here.
Yep, sure.
There's one here, Garret, sorry, and it's, do you support integration with BI tools?
Yes, absolutely. So we obviously have a full suite of reports in the system, but for our customers who are maybe using something like a Power BI, we can interface our data to those systems. You can have a single point of order business reporting. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, I think there's no more questions. I think that's probably it. So again, thank you all very much for your time and attention. I hope we found it relevant and useful.
We'll be in touch over the coming days as well to follow up and see if there are any further queries that you may have, or if anybody would like to set up, I suppose, a more in-depth demonstration. It's in 45 minutes, you can only get a small flavour, but we'd be happy to set up I suppose, a more personal demonstration as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I hope to speak to you soon. Thanks very much.